Then at around about 9:30 tonight, the sun will rise over the horizon and the solar panels will start to generate power. At that point, at a few minutes to 10, Pathfinder will send back to Earth the first information from the surface of Mars in over 20 years. The information will take around 10 minutes to reach NASA and put Rob Manning and his team out of their misery. And us come to that. Pathfinder might, though, be lying in bits, and until we get that first signal, we just don't know. And that leads me to the first of our studio guests this evening, a man who's been through more of these nail-biting moments than I, or indeed anybody else has, Dr. Patrick Moore. Also with me is the self-confessed rock fetishist, the British geologist at the centre of the debate about life on Mars, Dr. Monica Grady. And last but not least, a man who knows all about Martians, at any rate as they appear to the imagination of mankind, co-editor of the Encyclopedia of Science Fiction, Mr. John Clute. So Patrick, another space mission, another landing, this time on Mars. Do they still create the same excitement for you?
I think more so, really, because this is something entirely new, at the start of an entirely new phase in our exploration of Mars. The Vikings that landed there in the 1970s, they came down and stayed put. And the rover of Pathfinder should move around.
All right, and that makes it exciting for you.
It does indeed.
Bit of moving around.
It does indeed.
Monica, now if things go to plan, there'll be, at any rate, pictures of rocks on Mars. Is this what excites a geologist, or is it just the same as seeing stones in your garden?
No. Rocks on Mars are very, very different. We only know a little bit about what rocks on Mars are like. The Viking only looked at the soil. This is the first probe that's going to look at rocks themselves, so very exciting indeed. Right.
Now, from the science fiction point of view, what we really want to see in science fiction is ferocious, bug-eyed monsters determined on world domination. But we're not likely to see Mike Tyson on Mars, are we?
I think it's pretty unlikely. There are thousands of stories about Mars. Most of them are very old, and almost all of them are untrue. We're now beginning...
Okay, I've got to cut you off, because now Pathfinder isn't the first man-made object to make it to the surface of Mars. The Americans and the Soviets have been sending unmanned probes to Mars for over 30 years, but very few of them have been successful. Remarkably few, in fact. It's a bit of a Bermuda Triangle of space exploration compared to other destinations. So watch now a special edition of Horizon Destination Mars, which chronicles the Martian touchdowns and cock-ups of the past and looks forward to a more successful future on the Red Planet.
This is BBC Two's Mars Weekend, and we'll be joining Clive Anderson in a couple of minutes after a look at the Martian weather forecast with Ian McCaskill.
Hello, good evening. As if it wasn't hard enough forecasting for Earth, the Martian weather systems are even more chaotic and unpredictable than our own. Mars is much smaller than the Earth, and its gravity only 1/3 as strong. This is not all good news. Throw away your Zimmer frame, because even the lightest of winds can disturb the powdery red surface and cause dust devils or sometimes Mars-wide dust storms, turning the blue sky pink. The weather on Mars, like on Earth, can be very changeable. There are weather fronts there too, but in addition, Mars' orbit is more elliptical than our own, taking it much further away from the Sun for a time during its 687-day long year. Another cause of climatic chaos is the atmosphere itself, comprising of carbon dioxide and just a little water vapour. The carbon dioxide can and does change quickly between solid and gas, causing pronounced pressure changes and thus wind. But no rain. It hasn't rained for a very long time in Mars, several 100 million years of hosepipe ban, in fact. The atmosphere is now far too thin and cold, with what little water vapour there is trapped in ice crystal clouds and frost. You can see the ice caps here and here, mostly made up of frozen carbon dioxide, or dry ice, as we call it on Earth. Dust storms are the big thing, though. You can see the dust sweeping across the plain, and the sun's heat on the clouds of dust can give the storms an added boost and a life of their very own. Of course, what we're really interested in is the weather at the landing site of NASA's Pathfinder spacecraft. The site, known today as Aris Vallis, is on an ancient floodplain. The weather conditions for this area of Mars are usually fairly quiet at this time of year, with temperatures between -80 and -100 degrees Celsius. At the moment, there's a dust storm churning through the deep canyons of the Valles Marineris canyon system, 1,800 miles long and 600 miles south of the landing area. This is a shot of the surface on a fine Martian day. At the site itself, there's a lot of thin, wispy ice crystal cloud at the moment, just like our own cirrus clouds, and this will hopefully keep the surface temperature down and also keep the dust down in the canyons. So a good bet for the weekend that Ares Vallis is very cold and cloudy, but very, very dry. Wind speeds typically 10 miles an hour with gusts to 60 miles an hour. So a chance of some interesting weather then. And look out for those dust devils. That's all from me. I wish you a very good night. Bye-bye for now.
Welcome back. Welcome back to a very exciting and excited studio as we await a signal from Mars to tell us that all is well and that the NASA probe Pathfinder has suffered no fatal injuries after one of the most unusual touchdowns in history, give or take a British Lions try in South Africa. Pathfinder is now on Mars, we know that, but until 7 minutes past 10 tonight we really won't know whether it's in bits or in good shape and raring to go. Anyway, to discuss the mission until then, I'm joined by three very distinguished guests. The first, well, no evening like this will be complete without the man who more or less invented space as we know it, Patrick Moore. Then from the Natural History Museum, a geologist who has been at the heart of the debate about life on Mars, a woman into every kind of rock from iron pyrites to Led Zeppelin, Monica Grady. And finally, a man who knows more about Martians than Martians do themselves, since they probably don't exist, the co-editor of the Encyclopedia of Science Fiction, John Clute. For those of you who've just joined us, you're late, but let's take a look at the events that have happened earlier today. And these were the tent scenes at NASA's Jet Propulsion Laboratory in Pasadena earlier this evening, just before Pathfinder landed. During the landing, Pathfinder sent back a signal which lasted a few minutes after touchdown. The purpose of this was simply to tell Mission Control that Pathfinder hadn't been destroyed during the dangerous entry and landing procedures. What it hasn't told us is whether everything has arrived in working order and ready for a fortnight or so of running around the surface of Mars, taking photos, sending messages home and generally acting like a tourist. There you go though, as you can see, Mission Control at JPL were extremely relieved at around 6 o'clock this evening to receive that first signal telling them that so far everything was going well. Now in the 3 hours since then, the airbags surrounding Pathfinder have deflated and the petals, so-called, surrounding the little rover have opened up and allowed the probe to cool down while it waits for dawn to break on Mars. Oh, there we've even got pictures of dawn breaking on Mars, what it might look like. Now, the Mars landing site is roughly on Bangkok time for some reason at the moment, and so the sun should be rising any time now. Once the sun's rays hit Pathfinder's solar panels, it will wake up, give itself a quick health check, make sure it hasn't got any broken limbs or short circuits, and then it'll be send the really important signal, the detailed report that Pathfinder is fit and well and ready for its first full day's work on Mars. Either that or it'll phone in sick. Now, we're expecting its message at 7 minutes past 10. But as you will have seen in the Horizon documentary earlier, unless you switched over to Channel 5, stranger things have happened, this isn't the first time we've landed probes on Mars. I say we, somebody's landed probes on Mars. There were two hugely successful probes in 1976. The Viking landers gave the first ever images from the surface of Mars, as we can see from these pictures. But apart from the panorama, Viking also ran tests on the Martian soil, and that was some 21 years ago. So Patrick, now we've got this mission, 21 years on, how is this different? Is this any further forward?
Oh, very much so. After all, remember, the Vikings simply came down and there they stayed.
Yes.
And now this, the rover from the Pathfinder should move around.
Yes.
I'm sure that over at the JPL at the moment, the atmosphere is almost unbelievably tense.
So there's a good atmosphere there, there's not much of...
Some of these things work, some that are Mariners 1, 3 and 8, they don't
Yes.
work. It is very tense.
Yeah.
And of course, an immense amount of testing has gone on. And
Yeah.
looking at some of the records of that testing is quite amazing.
But nonetheless, this is quite a cheap mission, really. It's only cost $150, $200 million, which is You'd spend that getting to something which might or might not be Van Gogh.
About a quarter of a nuclear submarine?
Yes.
Yeah.
Now, but what are we going to find from the geological point of view, Monica? What's, just by looking at it, are you going to tell very much about the rocks that are there?
Well, we hope so. The site has been chosen very carefully to be at the mouth of a river valley where there should be a range of rock types from the highlands. There might be volcanic rocks, there might be rocks from just below the surface, there might be sedimentary rocks showing sort of stripes as if they've been laid down in the river. So
even fossils, if there happen to be any, but...
maybe.
They're talking this down. That's what we want to see, some fossils.
You know, probably
from a science
not.
fiction point of view, this is all far less small beer, isn't it? Now, because this rover, the best we can do to illustrate what it's like, it's a bit bigger than that, not much bigger in size, and it's a lot heavier, but it's not much bigger than that, is it?
Not a lot, no. Not the size of a large television set.
Yeah. So this is what's around. Now, we've seen Star Trek and Star Wars, even Doctor Who had better props than this normally. So is this a bit disappointing from the
If it
science
is,
world?
I would be personally disappointed in the person who was disappointed.
Yes.
Because what we have here is not a story, not a prop, but for the first time a vehicle which moves on Mars.
Yeah.
And we have it significantly very, very cheap. In a sense, it doesn't matter nearly as much if this one fails.
No.
Because it only cost $150 million.
Oh, right, so we just order a new one.
And there are others in the pipeline.
But this is going to wander around, and it's only destined to last about a week or 2 weeks. Now, that's a short time, even for a rover in the British Leyland days. So couldn't it last a bit longer than that to get
Well, it
more...
almost certainly could, I think. But on the other hand, don't forget, if it's going to succeed, it'll do so pretty quickly.
Yeah.
And the most important information will come back pretty well straight away.
Yes. So what's going to happen, though, after a week or two? Why is it going to stop?
It'll run out of power. And after all, it'll simply stay there until someday someone's going to go up there, find it, and cart it away to a Martian museum.
But it's
happen.
got solar panels to power it.
Oh, yes.
Or have they just not fitted batteries?
No, it should be powered up for some time.
Yeah.
And these experiments very often last longer than intended to do.
But if it's got solar power, why can't it go on forever?
Simply, well, the Martian night is very, very cold, more than minus 200 degrees, and it can't survive that for very long.
So it'll freeze its solar panels off.
It will indeed, yes.
All right. And it doesn't go very fast, does it? It goes...
No, about 20 meters per hour. I think it is something very, very slow indeed.
Yeah. So that means it's not going to cover a huge amount of ground.
It won't. It won't cover a very wide area because it can't go very far away from its from landing point. Otherwise, contact will be lost. It's a very restricted thing, but the point is it will move around, and it will show that this can be done.
Yes.
This, after all, is very much of a pioneering mission.
Yeah. And we're going to see in a moment how this is done, but is this going to be enough to be able to find enough different rocks to make a meaningful inquiry from your point of view?
Oh yes, should be able to, because as well as having the solar panels on it, it's got a little sensor which will move up and actually move against a rock face and take a composition, measure the chemistry of the rock, and so it'll go say, right, okay, that one's a green one, move on to that one's a red one, that one's a blue one.
Okay, we're going to hear a bit more about that, because the rover is clearly the key to making this mission different from the others, and the first pictures of the rover on the surface of Mars won't be sent back until early tomorrow morning, and you'll have your first opportunity to see them on Open Saturday with Patrick Moore at 8 o'clock tomorrow morning. So he's going to have to dash off and get a good night's sleep after this programme. In the meantime, just how do you control a vehicle when it's 130 million miles away? We have now the first of our home videos from Mission Control, bringing insights into the day-to-day problems of landings and operating a probe on Mars. Now, this will be done by Brian Cooper, so perhaps it ought to be called not a rover, but a Mini Cooper. He's the man who's actually going to be driving the rover, and it kicks off with a driving lesson on Mars down the road. Anyway, but whereabouts on Mars has this rover landed? The real question is that nobody knows exactly. The landing area has been carefully chosen, but the exact spot remains a mystery until we get some information back later on tonight. In fact, Pathfinder could have landed anywhere in an area that's supposed to be roughly the size of Cornwall. Now that sounds a bit casual, you know, when we're bombing people in the Gulf War, we knew just exactly where Saddam Hussein was having his barbecue.
Yes, but the Gulf's a bit closer than Mars. I mean, you're dealing with a distance now of more than 120 million miles.
Yeah.
So I think it's not bad, you know.
No, and I suppose it doesn't really matter, does it, if you just want to hit Mars?
Well, not really. We come down in this general area, Ares Vallis, which is an old floodplain, almost certainly.
Yes.
And, of course, we haven't got detail of the actual isolated rocks there.
No.
So really it's a certain amount of potluck.
Well, I've got some pictures here, which I hope demonstrate something. That is a picture of Mars, as you can tell, and there's a problem with a possible storm developing. Sorry, I'm being getting last-minute instructions coming in from Mars there. Now, I'm not sure these pictures do show very clearly where the storm, but there is a picture. This is the Ares Valley, which is landing on, and the landing site is somewhere up there, and there's a storm building up there. Now, we learned about the Viking mission that rather mucked them up.
Well, in point of fact, the dust some is not there. It's some way away near the Valles Marineris. Yeah. And, of course, although the wind speeds may be high, the Martian atmosphere is extremely thin. Yes. Don't forget, it's mainly carbon dioxide, and the ground pressure is below 10 millibars everywhere. So I think there's no danger at all. It'll be toppled over. The danger, of course, comes from dust being deposited on the various equipment.
And it could engulf our little rover thing.
Yes,
but you've actually got some rock from Mars already, haven't you?
That's right,
I've got it there. I mean, very, very careful with it. Now, how did you get that? How did we have that bit?
Well, that didn't cost us any number of millions of dollars at all. This one came for free. It's a meteorite, and it was blasted off the surface of Mars by an asteroid that came down, thumped into Mars, and shot the rock off. And this particular piece of rock fell in the village of El Nakla al-Bahariya near Alexandria in Egypt in 1911.
And what happened to it when it landed?
It allegedly killed a dog, one of the shower of stones. So it's a very, very special thing.
I bet somebody was looking after the dog at the time, because their dogs' pets always die when somebody else is looking after. Oh, well, there was this dog, and I had it out, and a meteorite killed it.
The rock came from space.
So that's a lot cheaper than having to send something there yourself. If they're just going to shower rocks down on us,
that's right. But we can't rely on it. We can't predict when and where they're going to fall. We can't predict that they're coming from Mars, because most of them come from the
can you be certain that actually did come from Mars and not just from a tower block down the road?
I can be certain this came from Mars, because gases trapped in rocks like this contain samples of the Martian atmosphere. As Patrick said, the Martian atmosphere is mainly carbon dioxide. It's very different from Earth's atmosphere. So by melting bits of this rock and taking the atmosphere out, we can see that it's definitely come from Mars.
Oh, well, we'll come back to that. But now, one of the reasons that NASA chose the Ares Valley for the landing site was because it had reasonably good weather. And I've demonstrated the photographs to you already, such as we could see. Mars, as we saw early on in the evening, can be prone to violent winds and dust storms. And recent images from the Hubble Space Telescope, however, have been a cause for concern. And the latest images do suggest that there is a sandstorm around, and it started blowing less than 600 miles south of the landing site in the Valles Marineris, which I think you pronounced rather better than I did, Patrick, canyon. Now, that's a canyon that would run from New York to Los Angeles, and it's 6 miles deep, so quite a grand canyon in itself. And it was a similar dust storm, which preceded the major sandstorm of 1976, which covered the entire surface of Mars just as the Viking probes had arrived. On the other hand, the same images show that there are thick clouds looming just to the north of the landing site, and this hope that these will keep the temperature down and reduce the risk of a major sandstorm. Nevertheless, with wind speeds of 80 miles an hour, sandstorm would be pretty damaging to the fragile rover. I mean, you seem to say, well, it wouldn't be too bad. But
well, I don't think it will. See, the atmosphere is so thin. And after all, the winds are going to be only 1/100th the strength of Earth winds at the same time. Now, I think the main danger there is that the dust may actually cover the vital parts and possibly cut off the solar panels. I don't think it will. This is not really a major dust storm anyway. It's some way away. I must say, from my observatory, I looked at Mars a couple of nights ago, and I would have seen anything major if it had been there, and I didn't.
You'd have told them and said
certainly
they could have a blower on the front of it just to blow some of the dust away, just to keep it a bit clear. All right. Now, so we know something about the landing site. Just now remind ourselves of what Pathfinder went through in order to get there. And the second... Right, now I mentioned in the introduction, Patrick, that you invented space, but of course that's a little bit of an exaggeration. We all know that Galileo invented space, but you have been around a long time, and you made a name for yourself in astronomy before space flight was possible. In fact, you did your first TV the same year that Sputnik was launched, and sorry, it's sounding like this is your life, but did you ever expect you'd get to the day when you would see, or we'd be able to see, little creatures, or at least little rovers, wandering around on Mars?
I thought I would. On the other hand, my time scale was wrong. That's it. I was expecting the first men on the moon by about 1980, because for 1969. My time scale was definitely too pessimistic. I knew it would happen, but whether I would see it myself, I didn't know. I only hoped so.
So this is going better than you thought?
It's going certainly much faster than I thought it would, yes.
Well, we've got 5 minutes, something like 5 minutes, just over 5 minutes, to when the point should come when we get the signal to say it's all right. If it doesn't come, all is not necessarily lost.
No.
Makes a rather drab moment in this programme, but they could possibly give a signal later with...
the high-gain antenna, which will open just after 1 o'clock this morning.
Yes, and they can't switch those on immediately.
No, they can't.
Well, why is that? Do they need more power for that?
Yes.
Right. Okay, well, I guessed right. Well, just to show the problems that planet and stargazers had from Galileo's time right up to the space age, here's a vintage clip from The Sky at Night in the very early days, featuring a familiar face.
Wasn't meant to be a comedy show, it turned out that way.
Well, of course, when we come to this kind of thing, we are rather dependent upon the weather. In fact, we're entirely so, because if you have clouds, there's really very little you can do about it. George, what do you think of the prospects now at the moment?
I think we're nearly totally obscured, Patrick.
Do you think it's any good turning onto the general direction of the moon? Frankly, I don't think it is. I can't see a single star at the moment.
It's totally obscured.
We were hoping to see Vega, which is the star, bright star straight above our heads, but even that's gone now. No, we've got to abandon it for a moment.
We're blacked out.
If we can see one star, we'll just get the telescope onto it and give you at least a direct picture of that.
No, we are totally obscured.
Well, there's hope yet. We still have some minutes.
I can see Altair.
Can you?
But it's gone again. It goes before you can get near it.
Well, Altair seems to be about the best bet. I suggest you turn the telescope onto Altair, and just as soon as we get any kind of a picture at all, we can feed it through, so to speak. Any luck?
No, I must be able to see it before I can get onto it.
This, of course, is one of the hazards of astronomy. There's just nothing one can do about it at all. There is definitely a lightning over there now, George. Can you see it? It's coming out. Yes, there is the moon. I can see it for the moment. No, it's gone again.
It's gone.
Infuriating. There's nothing one can do. George, can you see anything at all?
Vega.
Can you see Vega?
I don't know whether I can get on it.
Right, the star Vega, which is the thing we wanted to show you. It's a bright blue star right above us, as I said earlier on, and with any luck now, we will be able to get the telescope on it. I can see it quite clearly, and I think we're just about going to have time to show it to you. But, of course, there's still a lot of drifting cloud up there, and we just can't tell whether it's going to be obscured at the critical moment. Of course, you won't see Vega looking large, because no telescope yet built will show a star.
It's gone,
right. Is it gone?
Just as I got it on the crosswires, it blacked right out.
How absolutely typical. There's nothing we can do about it.
I can't move a 24-inch telescope quicker than that.
No, I'm afraid you can't. So, from Brighton, where the sky is now completely overcast, good night.
Good night.
1957.
I recognise the familiar sound of somebody filling in as you're desperately waiting for something to happen.
Frantic padding.
But everything else has changed apart from your suit, which I notice is exactly the same.
The same one, probably. I may say, both 5 minutes before and 5 minutes after that 20-minute live programme, the sky was brilliantly clear.
Right. Jolly good. Well, we think 2 minutes away from getting some sort of signal that the thing has landed and is now signalling to us. But Monica, if you just tell us where this little rover is sitting there waiting. Has this spot been selected simply because it's the least dangerous place to bounce to a halt, or because of the attraction of the rock site?
Because of the attraction of the rock site. It's in a place called the Ares Vallis, which is flat area, about, I don't know, 200 by 100 kilometres, I think it said.
Yeah.
And it's at the mouth of a river channel. It's flat. It's showing a lot of different variations in rock types will be there. Yeah. It's believed that the Pathfinder has actually landed on a raised island in part of that valley, right, where there should be a fair amount of different types of rock.
When you say it's a river valley, but the river would have flown there, what, millions of years ago?
Oh, absolutely, millions of years ago. Yeah. I mean, there's no trace of water there now. No. And not so much a river valley, more a delta, more a sort of catastrophic outflowing where rocks would have been swept down from the highlands. And that's another reason why it was chosen, because it's sampling highland area, whereas Viking did not sample highland rocks. Right. So this is what we're hoping. We're going to get a different type of rock from the rocks or from the soil that Viking sampled.
Yeah. And what we'll be able to tell about it from just this little thing going up and looking at it is it's obviously getting 3D pictures, but will you be able to say, oh, that's the sort of rock that we have on Earth, or it's something completely unusual?
Yes, I mean, this rock that I have here is a basalt. It's formed in the roots of a volcano. We're hoping perhaps that the type of rocks that Pathfinder or that Sojourner is going to look at will have a composition similar to that. They're rocks that have been brought up from a volcano and cascaded down and then weathered by water and then rushed down this channel. Right. Also, there might be sedimentary rocks laid down in water, which have been brought down by the same stream and jumbled together.
Okay, we're going to, sorry to stop you there, we've got to zoom over to Pasadena. Yes. There's a jolly sound to it, and we should see some pictures of the crew waiting to get this signal. 11 seconds to go. Looks like the front office of a sort of accountancy firm, but they'll get excited. That is Bob Manning, yes, he's the guy in the beard as we saw earlier on. He's the control the whole thing. Oh, he's gone off, maybe a bit nervous, has to pop out for a moment. Oh, now this should be the time then.
This is the great
we're waiting for them to whoop up.
We have the closed-loop receivers in lock and carrier.
Oh, that looks... Yeah, that's it. We have the signal. It's a very scientific way to work these things out.
The expected power is within 1 decibel.
This is why this couldn't be a British mission, because the British will just go, oh, that's it then, that's fine. But at least sort of go, oh.
We expect to see actual data from the spacecraft.
Okay, are we happy with that? While they celebrate in a controlledly wild way. So, so this is a great relief for everybody, Patrick.
It looks like it. I mean, don't be too cocksure yet. I mean, we don't quite know whether we're going to get any pictures back.
I'm never cocksure if at all possible.
It looks good.
Yes. Well, what can they do if it turns out not to be right? They'd have you sort of start putting thumbs down or something like that. So what are they going to be looking for next? We've got the signal to say it's ready.
They've got the signal to say the petals have opened, it's being able to point its antenna at the sun, it's being able to direct itself. They're now going to decide whether the low gain antenna has unfolded, whether that's all right. They'll decide whether to deploy the high gain antenna, and they'll make decisions in an hour or so's time whether the ramps should come down, whether Sojourner will go out, and the first pictures will be coming back in an hour or two's time. So this just means at the moment that the petals are folded back and that the mast has gone up. So
you've been in a lot of these mission points when there's a lot of tension building up to whether it's going to happen or not. I mean, does everybody sort of job on the line as to whether it's going to work, or would they have just done another one?
No, they were. After all, you say this by space standards. This is cost a lot less than some of the earlier ones. And as you say, if it doesn't work, it is a pioneering mission. And I think already, although we know it's landed there, and this very complicated manoeuvre, we know it's landed. We know the petals have unfurled. So even if nothing more happens now, and I think you will, but even if nothing more happens, you still can't write this off as a total failure. Even so,
no,
I think it may be a total success. But already we can say that it's proved its worth.
Yes, and I mean, do you think this is now fitting in with? You know, H.G. Wells would be pleased to see that we've got as far as Mars.
He'd be enormously pleased. He'd be enormously pleased at the fact that we're no longer telling big stories about Mars. We're beginning to tell little stories that work. It's terribly, terribly important that these missions continue. Not that the whole thing depends on success or failure of one enormously expensive, obsolete mission.
Yes. So this represents a sort of revival of the whole space program compared to, there's sort of been a few hiccups, haven't there, the last decade or so.
Absolute revival. Absolutely.
This is called Pathfinder. I mean, it is a Pathfinder. It's providing information for other missions that are being planned. It's providing information about the surface of Mars for the Surveyor mission, which is coming.
All right, well, let's go on to the future, because over the next week or